I'm here with Brodie and Andrew from Team Wolfpack at the end of Pro Tour Baltimore. I need to really breathe a little bit because the weekend was so unbelievable with you. It's amazing, really. Just now sitting here and have the opportunity to do your Lexi deck profile together is absolutely amazing. Has been such a great time with you, and honestly, thank you so much for just having me on the team, and now that we also can spend this time together. I mean, in the background, the viewers will see it, the venue is empty, the booths are getting packed up, and basically we are in the last minutes of the Pro Tour.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
It's been a really great time.
Oh, so good.
So yeah, we are taking a look at your Lexi deck profile, but at first I want to talk a little bit about your experience at the Pro Tour with you. So yeah, just please sum up in a couple of words what the experience was like for you both.
Oh man, do you want to start, Brodie?
Yeah, I can start. So we both went 6-1 day one, and then day two, I had a crazy draft pot. I managed to 3-0, and I was starting to really, feel that feeling that comes where I'm like, okay, it's looking good, it's a good tournament, and then I won the next 2 CC rounds, and that moment of knowing that I was locked into my first Pro Tour top 8 was really big, it was really special. I'm so happy. I'm so proud of our team. Andrew crushed it, Michael freaking crushed it, Pro Tour champion, let's go. 2 in the top 8 of the calling, such a fun weekend, yeah.
My experience was pretty similar, but yeah, so started off day one 4-0 and constructed, had a couple scary matches. There's like a Katsu where I was at 18 life and he was at 40 life when I started my pivot, and somehow got there. I had like a 30 damage rain razor's turn, which is pretty good, I heard. And then I had 2-1 draft with a really good Katsu deck. Going into day two, I started off with a 3-0 with like a super sick bonds, crazy line. I felt like I was dealing 20 damage on one turn, every draft I played that deck. So I 3-0'd that one, and then CC won my first game, pairing to Brodie. I'm like, I can't get any advantages here. We played tested a million times into each other. We're playing very similar lists. There was a moment in the match where I'm like, all right, I'm fine. And then he plays Winner's Bite, and I'm like, I don't like playing into this card. And then he plays CNC, and I'm like, is this my deck list or something? Because yeah, it was so that was a moment. And then I lost that one. I'm like, all right, I gotta win 2 more. Or I had to win 1 more. I did win the next one, because there wasn't a guarantee if I didn't win the next one. And I was having flashbacks to Pro Tour 1, where I was 10-1, and then lost one game, lost another game, and met Pablo Pintor, and you guys all know how that one went. So yeah, so this one I was able to clinch it against an Oldham with a 30 damage turn. I was at 8, he threw an 8 damage attack, blocked with Tunic, went down to 1 damage, and responded and just closed it out. And yeah, I mean, that was the start, and then obviously top 4.
That was one of the best moments of the weekend, was after round 13 when Michael won, Andrew won, so all 3 of us at that point were locked in to the top. We weren't necessarily locked for top half, but we were locked in top 8. That was huge. And the very last round was me versus Michael at table 1 and Andrew at table 2. So we're literally just the top 3 seats of the Pro Tour. It was amazing. And then, yeah.
It was so cool.
History from there, yeah.
And we have it all on camera.
We do, because Alex is a freaking beast. So.
it's so much to take in, actually.
Thanks to you for videoing the whole thing and
thank you,
keeping up with us all weekend. Yeah.
Thank you.
I'm actually so excited for the future, being able to actually relive the moments, and I feel like the fact that you were able to document all this it's another personal highlight for me, because otherwise, memories fade, right?
Yeah.
But videos are. Well, they last a lot longer.
Yeah. And you picked the best weekend to do it.
We really did, yes.
Oh gosh.
Man, we came in with no expectations, actually, right? And then you were just crushing it. Oh man.
So we have a deck profile actually to show you guys.
Yes.
And it's my Lexi deck, because Brodie's went back to Michael Thing because I don't know if you'll heard the story yet, but Brodie was like, I'm not going to play Lexi because I think Oldham is an objectively better deck. So he left his Lexi list at home so he wouldn't be tempted, even though me and Nathan told him to play it instead. So he shows up, and then he asks Michael Fang some questions. He's like, hey, so how does this matchup work for Oldham? And Michael's like, Brodie, I think you should play Lexi.
I was very wrong. Yeah. But so we saved each other in a way. He saved me by having Lexi cards, and then also he was on the fence. And the fact that I needed his Lexi cards just solidified him in playing Oldham, and we saw how well that worked out. So everything was perfect.
Oh my goodness.
But yeah, thanks to Michael. Without his Lexi deck, I would not be here.
So let's actually look at your equipment at first.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What kind of equipment did you brought?
Oh yeah, so the basic suite is very straightforward. It's just pure aggression, and each of these is very like specific. This allows you to play for 3 of a kind. It fixes a lot of the broken, or a lot of the issues in the cost curve of the deck.
Yeah.
Snapdragons allows you to combo very easily. It allows you to clear your arsenal for effects like Bolt and Shot, so like the reload effects really matter a lot. It can have relevance into stuff like Frailty Trap and stuff. But yeah, there's just like a lot of different niche cases.
Really nice for allowing you to double arsenal off of heat seeker effects and stuff. If you get trapped with 2 arrows, you don't just have to pass your turn and play through it.
Yeah, you can get super greedy with it turn 1 or turn 0. I wouldn't recommend it personally, but
usually not the right choice.
It's something you can do.
Yeah. And then, go ahead.
Oh yeah, Bullseye Bracers. Do you want to take this one, Brodie?
Yeah, so Bullseye Bracers is one of the hardest equipment, I think, to evaluate sometimes. And also it's very strong. Obviously, it has built-in Arcane Barrier 1. And then basically getting the ability to put an arrow into Arsenal at will without having to spend a Voltaire use usually comes up on like a 3 of a kind turn. You have all these cards in your hand, but you're limited by the number of times you can activate Voltaire. So you ideally have like some pump in play, like Rain Razors buffing all your arrows, and then you can flip the bullseye, put 1 more arrow in and fire it, and that's often worth like 7, 8, 9 damage. And a lot of times there's also plays with Endless Arrow where you like fire your last Endless Arrow for the turn. Again, a lot of times this might be on a Rain Razor, and then if they don't block it, you can Snapdragon, get it back, bullseye, deal 7 more damage, and arsenal it again, so you can convert the 2 to 7, stuff like that. Lots of cool stuff you can do with it.
There's a lot of sweet stuff. I also love like the Bolt and Shot interaction.
Yeah.
Where you can crack this, load up a Bolt and Shot, and then the Bolt and Shot also has the reload effect as well. And the Bolt and Shot has Go Again. So that's like a nice 13 damage play in Oldham, which can be very good. That was one of the ways I clinched my match to top 8 actually, was using that effect. But yeah, and then of course Voltaire. I mean, what a card. What a card. I like Go Again on demand. It's pretty great.
Yeah, amazing weapon. Basically, Voltaire is the reason to play Lexi, I would say, mostly. And then New Horizon as well is probably the most, besides Voltaire, the most key equipment for the deck. Like being able to have 2 arsenal zones, and like the flexibility that gives you, and the ability to like set up for power turns and have a 6-card hand. It's very powerful. Speaking of New Horizon, you want to show off your?
Oh, my gold foil.
Oh, yes.
Oh, my goodness. So, this weekend I was like, alright, I'm getting a gold foil, but there's one that I particularly want. This is the
so
one.
Amazing. Oh my god.
So yeah, I am just so excited about this.
It's really sweet.
It feels a long time coming because I've been playing Lexi since Tales of Aria, but it feels so good to finally get the gold.
You really earned it.
Cold gold. Hey. But yeah, let's see. We can hop into the Quivers though and kind of show you, talk through the possibilities. So I would say Quiver Wrestling these is like the standard go-to, and this is a percentage play, right? So it's not like anything guaranteed, but I would say like typically your deck is about 60% arrows. So with the knowledge of like there's like a 60% chance to hit, you utilize the information you have in your hand to make use of it in such a way that you can capitalize on it effectively without like wasting resources.
Yeah.
And then sometimes like you're forced into a position where it's your only game-winning play, and sometimes you just gotta roll the scab skin leathers, roll the dice, and see what happens.
It has seriously saved me before.
I really like this card. I think it's really fun. I enjoy this sort of like interaction, and there's no guarantees with it, but I think that's kind of cool. Like, I think it's one of the reasons I enjoy card games is like no guarantees, but you get to like work hard and you get to like take like scary lines and hopefully it works out.
Just have to take the best odds.
Yeah.
Another, like, I'd say like the main use case for this card is on, again, 3 of a kind turns. Like a lot of the equipment goes toward these big 3 of a kind turns, but if you do draw off your 3 of a kind like non-arrow cards, in our deck those tend to be resource cards like yellows or blues. Almost all the reds are arrows, if not all. Question mark?
Yeah, so there's like a few bites and stuff, but we can get into that later. But yeah, I would say mostly except in like very aggressive matchups, we're running like only reds as arrows.
Yeah,
so.
I guess first Oldham. In the sideboard, there's definitely several reds. But basically, if you get non-arrow flooded, you can salvage your turn with the Quiver of Rustling Leaves. A neat trick as well is to activate it and then hold priority and activate it again on top if you have no cards in your arsenal at all, and the first one hits, then the second, now New Horizon gives you the second arsenal slot and you can double quiver if you're just totally resource flooded and hit 2 arrows at once.
I've definitely done it before. It's kind of sweet.
Yeah.
That's the Quiver. Quiver of Abyssal Depths. This is more of a sideboard card, I would say. I think if a deck is trying to fatigue you can consider running it, but I think the only deck really good enough at fatiguing us, outside of maybe like Arachne, or I suppose like if you want to play a grindy matchup into Missouri, you could consider this, but I would say Oldham is the primary matchup that I would bring this in.
Yeah, I agree.
And yeah, it really just gives you a way to potentially like adjust your stack if you feel like your stack is like not very good. Or like some games, like you're kind of forced to pitch Rain Razors because they're your resource cards, but then you want to recirculate them to like more center of the deck, or like hopefully get them up near the top of the deck. So you just kind of like take a chance and potentially take an opportunity to like adjust, like maybe like 10 blues in a row, you need to like mix that up. This really gives you the option of like fixing your endgame stack. Yeah. In like a solid way.
And this is like the first difference in our lists. I know some Lexis I know this weekend were on only Quiver of Abyssal Depths. I actually wasn't playing this card at all. I was playing just Rustling Leaves. And instead in my equipment suite I had a Heart of Ice. This was my gold foil for the weekend. Nathan called it before I opened it. Yeah, so I had Heart of Ice mostly just as like a safeguard for Kanos, any Kanos in the room. Having the extra Arcane Barrier and the ability to kind of like make them decide whether they're going off when you still have all your resources in hand does a lot. So some of our Lexis played this purely for Kano. I did not run into any. But yeah.
Yeah, didn't Michael ran into 2 on Lexi.
Yeah, he did.
And he got them both with the Heart of Ice. So
it paid off.
I guess it's worth it if you got Kanos in your meta, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this card, I could definitely see it coming out. Michael's like, why don't you just pitch stack this? So there is some potential there. If you're a pitch stacking genius and not like me.
I think it's pretty cool to see that like there's 4 Lexis in the top 8. I believe 2 of them only had Abyssal Depths. One only has Rustling Leaves. You have both. So it's like cool that there's some like it's still unknowns and debate with the Quiver.
Yeah. What I like about this particular one is I think into Oldham sometimes like pitch stacking isn't really a viable option because of how they can adjust like and hit your stack and stuff. It can be very like detrimental to like you may have a perfect stack, but they will throw an effect at you. Especially like some of my good friends who are very good at all of them. They'll like be like, watch, he's like, all right, there's the Rain Razors, there's the 3 of a kind, and then they'll like send a Spinal to bottom around to coincide at the exact same time, and then they'll like hit their stack at the same time that you're hitting your stack, and you'll be like, all right, Rain Razors, 3 of a kind, Endless Arrow, and they're like Spinal, and you're like, oh my gosh.
Look at your hand, there's like 2 0 blocks, a 2 block, like, take 9, don't do it again.
Right. And then they do it the next turn, because they're a pitch stacking genius. But yeah, no, I think this can help with that strategy because it throws off their stack, and you just can consistently try to set up 5-card hands. And if you're, the end 20 cards of your stack are powerful enough, you'll just be able to like continuously like circulate a powerful 5-card hand.
Yeah.
And that's one of the reasons I do like this card personally.
For sure.
But
want to start talking about the arrows?
Yeah, let's go arrow switch. We have like a wild one. So we have the Go-Agains. These are actually kind of interesting. We did 2 Sickums, 2 Falcon Wings, early sided. Your list differed a bit, right?
Yeah, I was on 3 Falcon Wing, 1 Sickum.
Okay.
Same number. total.
But yeah, so these cards are actually very good into, well, particularly into Oldhim, I would say. I find that I'm really trying to set up 6-card hands, and especially if they're trying to like block out a lot, just the ability to leak damage is super crucial in terms of like not just leaking damage on Rainrazor's turns, although that's like important. I would say you need other ways to do it, and I would say these particular cards, especially in combination with Codex of Frailty, if you are able to 4-arrow them, and like Codex on the turn, you can really actually go above and beyond their block value, which is super important. And I found this is actually really nice as opposed to like the full 3 Falcons. I really like leaking the 1 damage off the 1 card. I find that Oldhim really doesn't want to block Sikkim Shot in general because you have a lot more threatening effects in your deck. And if they spend 4 value covering up a Sikkim, they're unlikely to be able to block, say, like an Infecting Shot or an Endless Arrow. So this is kind of something that I feel like it typically chips 1 damage, which I'm really happy with.
Yeah. And just in general, with Codex of Frailty, these cards can be really strong because as great as Codex is, sometimes you'll have awkward situations where you already have an arrow in Arsenal that doesn't have Go Again. And so without committing your Snapdragon Scalers, there's no way to play Codex, fire an arrow off of it, and assuming you draw another arrow off the ponder, get full value unless you commit those snaps because you run out of action points. So in a lot of situations versus like any deck, being able to just go grab a Go Again arrow off of Codex can be really nice. And final comment about these cards is I also found that they're pretty strong in the Icelander matchup. Just having built-in Go Again, there's a lot of situations where that comes up.
Yeah, especially Icelanders who are on Encase, it's sort of a way to like freeze you out of activating Lexi and therefore like really doing anything in your turn. If you're able to Arsenal to Go Again, it's an effective way of combating that and just clearing your Arsenal for free.
For sure.
I will say additionally, it's kind of like an interesting way to combat like the Tumults I played from Dromai. If you've dealt enough damage to get them past like a critical life threshold, being able to Arsenal a Go Again arrow and threaten their life totals in like a reasonable way it's like another effective use.
Yeah, for sure.
It's kind of cool. Yeah, so that's the Go Again arrows. We got the reload arrows, I guess, up next here. And these are kind of, I guess, these are a bit self-explanatory, but really I view them as like sort of a combo way of increasing your Rainrazor's damage. And also just kind of bypassing the restrictions of Voltaire.
Yeah, and this is another spot where our lists differed a little bit. We are all on 9 Bolton shots. Andrew's on 2 Pathing Helix. Michael Hamilton's on 1. I'm on 0. I really wanted to get them in the list, but I ended up, because of Heart of Ice and other things I wanted to fit in, not finding the space.
Yeah, and I ended up cutting Searing Shots. My thought was kind of that in more aggressive matchups, in theory, like reloading is potentially just more damage than 1 damage, or at least it threatens more than that. And so, what I really want to do with my deck is force my opponent to block at some point. And if they're blocking, I have more time to find my power. And so, like, basically just like putting his threatening on hit as much as possible. And if they don't block, well, then it's just gravy. Like,
They're in for a world of pain.
Very good, yeah. Then that's kind of just like I would say the general thing, right? Like this obviously has combo applications with Bullseye Bracers, but
yeah,
it's like the main thing. Rainrazors, yeah.
Yeah, you can go nuts. Ultimately, they're mostly there to, like we were saying earlier, just get around that twice per turn restriction on Voltaire when you're playing a 3 of a kind and you have so many arrows in hand.
Let's see.
The blues.
Blues. Do we want to talk over blues or efficient damage arrows?
Whatever you think. We can go ahead and, since we did the 9 Bolton shots, we can jump into blues or.
We can just do like infecting. Maybe just like talk over like solid on hit arrows.
Yeah.
In general. This is kind of like a whole suite, I feel like.
So Searing Shot and Drill Shot are an interesting conversation where they both deal 1 on hit theoretically, and in a vacuum, Drill Shot, at least early game, tends to be better because taking away a piece of their armor is worth a lot more than just taking away 1 life, because it's 1 life and whatever on hit they're going to stop with it later. But there are situations where all their armor is already gone, or they can throw the last bit of armor in front of the Drill Shot without fully blocking it and deny your on hit. So sometimes Searing Shot is better. Something we've gone back and forth on is kind of trying to decide which one is ultimately better in a vacuum. And like here you have 3 Drill Shot, 2 Searing Shot. I think ultimately, even though situationally both can be better than the other, Searing Shot is just a point of damage, and Drill Shot in some matchups kind of plays a really key role, and you want to have access to it as much as possible.
I would say, yeah, especially because like Oldims aren't necessarily off of a Rampart yet. I think like Michael Fang's list is very good and it's like solid in Lexi in general. But I would say like because Rampart still exists, you definitely want Drill Shot, and it's also good into like my decks as well, because it sort of like forces positions where they're incentivized to block with armor that is worth much more than this.
Right.
They want to spend it on Endless Arrows and Red Infectings and Heat Seekers. But if you're able to kind of draw that power away from them with the Drill Shot, it's just very good for us in general as a Lexi player.
We can talk about Heat Seeker and Endless Arrow next. These are kind of our card draw on hits. Both of them shine into Dromai in particular, because these other arrows here all say if they hit a hero, they do something, whereas Endless and Heat Seeker can be used for attacking dragons. Endless Arrow clearing a board of dragons is one of the most powerful things you can be doing versus Dromai, or most efficient. Just 2-card hand, pitch a blue, Voltaire or Endless at 2 different dragons, and then you still get it back to Arsenal. And then, Heat Seeker is arguably the strongest arrow on hit. There are situations where you can't clear your hand and you're going to Arsenal another card, or you have a Ponder token and sometimes you can't double arrow Arsenal, so it ends up like not always giving you a full card, but in a vacuum it's a snatch.
Yeah, actually in my quarterfinals matchup, this card was extremely impactful. I think it's a bit of a roll of the dice at times, because sometimes the arrow that comes in face up is worse than a card that you would want to Arsenal. Say for instance if you have an Endless Arrow still in hand. And if you're off of snaps and you get, say, like a blue headshot or something, which can feel very bad, that is like a possibility. And so you could just be losing the game with this arrow. Or if you're off of New Horizon and your opponent doesn't block and you get a face-up thing in your arsenal, you could lose the game on the spot.
Yeah.
So it's sort of finicky, but it's also extremely powerful as well. And it just really brings like, I mean, it just draws you through your deck. It draws you towards power. It's +1 card, and so many of Lexi's cards are worth more than 3.
Yeah.
Because of the way that arrows work, most arrows are actually a 0 for 4, with like an additional on hit, which just like drastically increases the overall power of this card.
And then, finally the Remorseless and Infecting Shot. These are basically the damage on hit arrows, along with Searing Shot, but the damage on hit 1 costs. So comparing these cards is kind of interesting. Infecting Shot is one of the strongest arrows in the game. It's just straight up Blood Rod on hit, which is basically 2 damage on hit. And Remorseless is quite the card. Versus aggro decks, it tends to be stronger than Infecting Shot when they really want to keep their hand, and if they didn't block out the on-hit on Remorseless, that probably means they've kept quite a few cards. And, it can deal 3, 4, 5 damage to them because their hand was strong enough to justify keeping that, but then you just did a 1 for 10 arrow. And also the defense reaction line of text on Remorseless comes up sometimes. It can be relevant just to like make an Oldhim have to block weirdly, or Dromai or something.
Yeah, it's funny because you'll play the card and attack them with it, and they're like doing all these like Crown of Seeds and stuff, and you're like, what's going on over there? And then you're like, oh yeah, like Remorseless has text.
Yeah.
Yeah, because like, I don't know, it's very good in the mirror. If you can ever double Remorseless somebody, it's pretty good. Basically, it just forces them to block usually, which has its own applications. Yeah, there's just a lot of damage in a lot of these arrows. And, yeah. Endless Arrow is a red snatch that draws a red snatch, which, is pretty good, I would say.
Endless Arrow is probably the best card on the playmat right now. They're all good, but this one has the high ceiling.
Yeah, this card is one of the best cards that make your opponent block, which I really like.
Yeah.
Alright, this is it for the on-hit arrow effects. We go a bit sideboard at this point. We could touch on the fuse arrows.
Yeah.
We have some interesting fuse, and maybe touch on the ice as well, because we do also have, at least I have 10 supporting ice. I believe you had 11? Or did you cut down to 10?
I had 11, yeah. 9 Winter's Bite and 2 Arctics.
Let me pull up the ice here then. So these are kind of supportive of each other, and I would say they're quite linked, I guess, in general, in terms of power. Like chilling without ice is, I mean, it's just a 1 for 5 arrow, right? Or 2 for 5 with go again.
Yeah, it's the versus Oldham. It tends to be the most vanilla card in your deck.
Yeah, but once you get the fuse off, like especially in aggro matchups, it oftentimes forces a 2-card block. And if you do have the Rain Razors on that particular turn, you can get like an extra 3 value off of the effect.
Yeah.
It basically says discard a card on hit for all intents and purposes if you do get the fuse on it. And Frostlock is kind of similar in that, like, especially if you're able to like kind of like do your whole turn and then end the turn with a fused Frostlock.
Yeah.
It's so brutal because your opponent has no clue that they won't be able to play the game, so they're leaking a lot of damage, and in order to like send back a lot of damage, but then they take this and their whole turn is just like shut off.
Yeah. Usually your blue card just ends up trading up for 2 of their cards.
Right.
So good.
Yeah, and like 1 for 4 is, I mean, it's not bad, right?
Yeah. The fact that chilling extends to all future arrows in the turn, whether it hits or not, when you fuse it, makes it one of the most devastating on-hit effects in aggro mirrors.
Yeah, I felt like it was definitely a way to kind of unlock the mirror. Didn't quite work out for me in my quarterfinals, but it did like force him off of, I think, a power turn, which ultimately like ended turning the match in my favor, which I think is it's quite worth the slot. It seems pretty good.
For sure.
Yeah. I guess we could talk through bites in Arctic, but Arctic is maybe the kind of standout, or maybe you want to discuss like the red-yellow bite.
Yeah.
Because that's kind of a little bit more
Basically, the winner's
out
bites.
of the ordinary.
The idea is just that winner's bite, when you play it, trades evenly with one of your opponent's cards, but if you were able to get it in an arsenal and flip it face up with Lexi ability, then you also gave them a frostbite on top of that, which in aggro mirrors, trading 1 for 1 and then giving a free frostbite is quite powerful, and some decks have a really hard time playing through a frostbite, give you almost a whole card to get through it. So it fuses these elemental arrows and ideally trades up. The yellow and blue bites are also resource cards, so just very flexible. I'm on 9 winners bite. We think that the flip up frostbite effect and then trading 1 for 1 is good enough to justify the reds as well, even though you can't pitch them as flexibly. And then Arctic is maybe the most unique card to our list for this weekend. I don't know how many other Lexis were on it.
I think it had picked up steam in a few lists, and I know I've seen like multiple lists with it. But I do think it's just an exceptionally powerful card, and I think some people had moved away from it in favor of traps and stuff. But I think it's quite powerful. And just the ability, especially because sometimes it's very hard to get momentum, and if you're able to 1 card, potentially give 3, maybe even 4 frostbites, it's kind of like taking a roll of the dice. But if you're like playing well and you happen to catch them on a red hand, it's a good way to win a game. And I think if I had seen a couple more of these
In that semifinals game.
in my semifinals, I would have been a little happier.
Yeah.
It's a very good card into a red line deck, I'll put it that way.
For sure.
It feels sort of like a 1-card Arclight Sentinel.
It can feel kind of devastating being across the table from this when it's flipped up in Arsenal. You get your 1 frostbite, and then Lexi's firing arrows at you with go again. And your 2 choices are block them and just continue to give Lexi your whole hand for however many turns, or don't block them and try to keep a turn, knowing that if she sees you do that, she's going to give you 3 frostbites and basically make you pass. So most of the time you basically just have to accept your fate, but it's yeah.
It's actually so hard to break out of an Arctic lock, I find, in the mirror too, especially if your opponent has momentum when they're presenting this, because not only do you have to calculate how much damage can I deal, but you also have to calculate, can I break out of a 3 Arctic turn? And you have to make the decision before much information is presented to you. So if they lead with like an innocuous arrow, you're low on life totals, you have to make the decision when you see the first arrow. You don't get a chance to wait until they shoot a red infecting for 6. And if you leak a bit of damage on, like, say, like, I don't know, a yellow Bolton or something, that's taken away from life totals that you can use to pivot the matchup in your favor. And so I'd say this card, especially when like your opponent is the aggressor, or they're regressing and they have this like face up, it's quite a powerful tool for them to maintain their aggression.
Yeah.
And force you into blocking.
I think it's really strong. It's also one of the ways you can kind of tech for the Azalea matchup in particular, because that deck usually doesn't play a ton of blues, so I would say it like shines there the most.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely.
All right. That was the ice.
The ice section. There we go.
What is coming next?
I think we are on to the power cards.
Power 12.
Yeah.
We sideboarded 3 of them, but it deserves its spot, I think.
Do you want to do poppers first?
We could do poppers, sure.
Do the last of the sideboard stuff. And I almost forgot about poppers.
Yeah, poppers are unique. Obviously, they're a Dromai.
I think they're in here.
Inclusion, just in general. Oh, here we go. So first up, we have the Death Tuche.
The Death Tuche,
as Nathan would say. This card, I kept trying to walk away from this card, and I kept coming back. And really the reason why is Artivore and Oldhim. You send this card at an opponent for 6, they 2-card block, and they save 2 cards. You have an Artivore, and you have this face up in Arsenal, and they have no armor. They're like, well, I guess I need to save 3 cards for your Death Touch, otherwise I die. Yeah. That's just such a powerful feeling. I think also, like, it is the best Codex target. So I don't actually run this in many matchups, but I do run it into Oldhim and Dromai. I would consider it Icelander as well. But it's so efficient and above curve. If you ever have a chance to, like, pop this into Arsenal, like, man, your opponent just looks at a 1 for 8 and they're like, oh my goodness, this is a woundable Lecasio resource instead of a card. Like, it's so good.
Death Touch didn't make it into my list. Nathan's been really trying to get me on it, but my Popper Suite instead is 2 CNC and then 3 Battering Bolt.
This will actually get to you. Yeah, do you want to discuss kind of the applications?
Yeah, so CNC, of course, is a popper into Dromai, but then it really shines into the Lexi mirror as well. If you're shooting arrows with them and you're holding this in your hand, and at the end you kind of surprise them with the 6 that most of the time it's an absolute must block. They have to give you 2-3 blocks for it because they have 2 arsenals or even just 1 arsenal. It's unreasonable to let a CNC hit if you have the 3 blocks. It can be a really fun Codex target as well if it lines up. A lot of times you have like 1 resource floating and a tunic, and you make them block, and then you play your Codex from hand, and hopefully get them with the CNC.
Yeah. CNC, I mean, even in the mirror, it kind of gives you a bit of agency to kind of put the brakes a little bit on your opponent and say, hey, give me 2 cards. Like, I just need 2 cards. You can have the rest. It's okay, but give me 2, please. And I just like it for that reason. I think I only run it into Dromai in the mirror. I've considered running into Azalea. It's performed reasonably well there. And it's kind of dependent on what they have in their arsenal as to whether it's good or not.
Yeah. And how many 2 blocks and 3 blocks they draw.
Yeah. If they're on all pumps and they're only arrows in arsenal, it's very good. If they have a pump in arsenal, it's very good. Yeah. It's kind of like a dependent card in that matchup, but I think it's quite a card. Battering bolts. Brodie included 3 of these copies of this card. I'm kind of on the Nathan train, the Nathan Lepam train.
Nathan is our teammate.
This card sucks. Okay, it's just bad, but it's not that bad. It's basically like I never want to be caught with 2 poppers in a hand and nothing to do. This card says I have go again if you pay 3, and that's okay.
Yeah, we felt like 2 CNCs was the right number for the Lexi mirror. So then my logic is that if all poppers beyond that are being played into only Dromai, and I just want it to be the best possible in the Dromai matchup, then Battering Bolt's the best choice for that because it doesn't brick 3 of a kind. Any of the other poppers that just like the generic attack actions, if you draw them off 3 of a kind, you can't use them that turn. So Battering Bolt is just kind of like a safe inclusion. When you aren't able to pop with it, it keeps your deck a little bit more consistent, and you run into less feels bad situations.
Yes. I think it's a very reasonable card that always costs 1 more resource than you have. That's sort of my opinion on it.
Yeah, my quarters game today.
Oh no.
I was going to play 3 Oak. I blocked with a Red Arctic because I was going through my brain just like 2 life or 1 resource. I guess I'll take 2 life.
Red Arctic's so good.
Yeah. The one resource would have meant another arrow on a double Rainraiser 3-0 turn, so maybe I should have just kept it.
Casual 8 damage. How much life was she at, Brodie? 3?
It was before that, but
It's okay. It's okay.
still a lot of damage, yeah.
Anyways, battery and bolts, you are loved, but not loved that much.
Make no mistake, the on-hit effect is just, like, there. It's an added bonus sometimes. It can be relevant.
Have you ever killed a Rainrazors into Azalea, though? I have.
Ooh,
it felt very good. It's funny because they can't play the Rainrazors, otherwise you deal 2 damage anyways, so...
Yeah.
What a great card to counter Rainrazors. You should try running into Lexi maybe, or don't. Sounds entertaining there at least. These are the power cards.
Yeah.
And these are... I'm being a little broad because Artivore is technically a sideboard for setup matches, but this card is so good, man. Like, I just love this freaking card.
It's very strong.
The fact that people aren't running this card blows my mind. God, into Oldham, it's my favorite. It's just like the card that says, I'm a mini Rainrazors that Oldham will probably take damage from.
Yeah.
But he can't respect it too much. He can't like leave himself off of Arsenal because you have 5 more of these effects incoming.
Right.
And it just digs you deeper. Like, it allows you to find your 3 of a kinds. The number of times I've Artivored into Rainrazors 3 of a kind, my goodness, so many times. Like, so many times. And when you do that, when you have +3 on everything, all your breakpoints are impossible to meet.
Yeah.
And you're 7, 8, and your opponent's like, okay, I
taking
take
a
some
lot of damage this turn. Yep.
I take all the damage.
This gives you more chances to have like a double buff effect with your 3-0 can like really go above and beyond in Oldham.
Yeah. It's kind of like the classic, like, breakpoint is just very important because +2 is, on most arrows, it's just 6, right? And that's 2 cards blockable. But the extra 1 is super relevant because you're going over the 2-card block.
Yeah.
All of a sudden now they have to have a Red Staunch. They have to Crown of Seeds. They have to Rampart. Whatever it is that they're trying to do. But that takes an additional card, so now they're spending 3 cards. Except in the case of Red Staunch. But most of the time they're spending 3 cards on blocking 1 arrow, and
that feels great. Yeah.
Yeah. If you have an arrow from Arsenal as well, like, all of a sudden they just spent 3 cards on one of your potential 4 attacks. Whew.
And like you said, it pairs well with that touch.
Mm-hmm.
Coming in for 7. Also, the fact that both these cards pitch for 2 is really nice. Like, it gives you a lot of flexibility. It makes awkward hands less awkward. They block for 0, so if they were red cards, they would still be really strong, but it would be a little scary, like you are forced into using them for their 1 use. And being a yellow allows for a lot more potential lines of play when you can't get full juice out of them for their effect.
I think the design space around yellow for these cards is actually really important because Oldham, well, I think it's somewhat favored if you're piloting very well for Lexi. I think it's an extremely difficult matchup, and I think the amount of reps you need in order to kind of like reach that level it takes a lot.
Yeah.
And being able to comfortably pitch stack or like reasonably pitch stack and sort of like seed your bottom 20 cards with power cards is actually very important for players getting into the game and stuff, and so they can kind of like experiment with like this and not feel bad that they're pitching a red to the second cycle.
Right.
I think it's sort of like an important teaching mechanism for the Ranger class, as like you can second cycle this and not actually feel bad about it.
Yeah, you will get to see it later in the game for sure. All right, now the arguably 2 strongest cards in the deck. Rainer's just close.
Yeah, it's very close.
I'm gonna start with the OG 3 of a kind.
I love me some 3 of a kind.
So this card it's pretty obvious why it's so good. Mathematically, it's insane. You're paying 1 resource and a card to draw 3 cards. So you're just going +2 cards out of nowhere with the restriction that you can only play from your arsenal, which is a real restriction.
It is.
But our class conveniently shoots all of our attacks from the arsenal. So
I mean,
this is a nice way to. It's some of your biggest, strongest turns when you're trying to leak damage into defensive decks, when you combine it with buffs like this, and like we said, the equipment, the bullseye bracers to get another arrow beyond the Voltaire restriction. But honestly, I think its most powerful use is in more normal damage trading games. You can block with a lot of your hand, and then just keep like a resource card and 3 of a kind, and just fill back up and have a full turn. And you basically you're drawing 2 cards, so essentially you can just 2 extra cards, so you can like block 6 for free basically every time you have 3 of a kind. I've heard it described as like a free carrion husk. Your deck has 3 husks.
That's a Michael thing as well.
Yeah.
Yes. So I will say, like, the block 6 comes with a caveat, right? Because we have so many power cards, and because we like running ice and aggro, and some people like running traps in the mirror, there becomes like points where drawing 3 cards doesn't guarantee more than 1 arrow potentially, or maybe even 0 arrows if you're particularly unlucky. And so like blocking a 6 comes with a cost of a percentage of what you're drawing. And I find like when I have tempo, I'm pretty happy to take damage to guarantee that I'm going to have a stellar 3 of a kind turn.
Yeah.
And possibly even be able to combo off, right, and use the bullseye bracers. But when I'm behind, that's when you have to gamble, right? That's when you roll the dice, take some risks, and really just like rely on the heart of the cards to to make your dreams come true. Because sometimes that's all you get. Sometimes you just got to YOLO 3 of a kind and be like, all right, please.
And also rely on your quiver of wrestling leaves. This card is clutch when your 3 of a kinds aren't great. It can get you out of a lot of tricky spots.
Here. Codex of Frailty. Wow.
What a card.
What a card.
Also a yellow, which is nice, first of all.
So it's funny, this card has seen a lot of hate, but I actually think it's necessary to beat Oldhim right now. I don't think Lexi could beat Oldhim realistically without this card consistently.
Okay.
Maybe this is me. I don't really enjoy playing it at Oldhim. More than like a few times.
I feel the same.
At an event. Like it's fine. Like once or twice you're like, alright, yes. But when you play like 5 or 6 Oldhims, the games go very, very long. Realistically, I think this card gives you a lot of agency to navigate the matchup. And I think the biggest thing is because of Crown of Seeds and because of the way that Oldhim can block approximately like 12 to 14 to 15 each turn.
Pretty consistently.
If he's got Tunic up 15, that's just like a mountain to climb over.
Yeah.
Especially if you don't have a weapon, especially if you aren't like an OTK deck. And I think like this card allows you the momentum to not only like leak some damage, but also have a 5-card hand going into the next round. It's also good in other matchups, but I think like, with all the talk of bannings and stuff, the matchup that I would miss it the most is Oldhim, and I think Oldhim would be quite a dominant deck if this card didn't exist, in my mind. Even though he already won the 200k tournament. But yeah, this card is like very powerful, but I also think I'm personally okay with facets of power, I guess, within a class that are extremely powerful, that define the class. Like Rainers, there's like Endless Arrow, like 3 of a kind, but that are specific to the class. And then if you want to attack the class, you provide better on hits to other classes. Maybe you do more breaking points. Maybe you find ways. Although I will say, please don't print anymore. Destroy all cards in Arsenal. It seems a little targeted at Ranger LSS. Just say it. I will say when Lexi first came out and CNC targeted all cards in Arsenal, I'm like, it already screws Ranger. Why does it screw them twice as much?
I know, yeah.
But yes.
This card is also just very powerful into aggro decks, like especially ninjas. Anyone where the frailty is going to cost them more than a point of damage. Rangers too. It shines most in the Ranger mirror.
So good.
Forcing them to get an attack back sometimes is good for them. They get an attack of their choice, but in a lot of situations it can cause them to not be able to block with one of those last cards in their hand. You can force through on-hit effects. Even without the frailty or the card selection, it's a 2-for-1 at yellow. It can block, which is blocks 2, but it's a lot more than these guys. Just overall, really stellar card. One last card we can toss in here. It doesn't really go with the power cards, but I just wanted to mention is Codex of Inertia, which you didn't end up on any of those. Michael and I both played one as basically just another tech card into Oldhim. It is similar to Frailty. Into Oldhim, the Inertia token is a lot more relevant than the Frailty token. It's also a lot more unknown flipping off the top of your deck, but like you mentioned earlier, usually there's about a 60% chance to hit an arrow. You can often make use of anything you hit in one way or another. And the key part is really just giving Oldhim an inertia token. Means next turn they're off an arsenal. That gives them a lot less flexibility with their defense and just less total cards to stop your next turn. So I like that card at 1 of. I didn't play against any Oldhims this tournament except for Michael once in Swiss. But just in testing, I like that card. I don't know how many is right. It's possible 0 is right, but just wanted to mention it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I actually have like a slightly different opinion on inertia. I think it is a good card, but I think it's, in my opinion, it's very specific to Fatigue Oldhim.
That's
or like
fair.
defensive Oldhim, right? Because aggressive Oldhim, he gets an extra card and he's like, what can I do with this card, right? You know, he's like, he can be quite happy to just, he's like, oh, I got a Spinal, well, that's cute. Like, you know, I'll just send Spinal, you know, or, you know, whatever it is. And potentially like even a D-React, which
That's
it just
the
kind
worst,
of depends.
yeah.
You're just like D-React and then you top deck like an Endless Arrow and you're like, oh sweet, you send the Endless and they D-React you and you're like, that was interesting. But it is, I do agree, like I think it's quite good into defensive Oldhim. I think if people ever sort of pivot to the Dawn Fatigue style where it's, you know, it's life gain and
Trent McBride's Richmond deck.
right, they're kind of like trying to go long and all that sort of thing. I think it's quite effective into that sort of deck. Just having like a 5-card hand going into like a 4-card hand is a great way to leak damage.
Yeah.
One card that I do weirdly like into aggressive Oldhim though, Remembrance. The card that shall not be named. The card that seems to keep making it into decks. Weirdly, whenever people talk about this card being banned, I don't think they talk about how often it's used to combat fatigue, which I think is one of the most annoying strategies in the game, and if not like held in check, possibly one of the most unhealthy, because I think it's a reasonable condition to have as like a test of skill, but I think if things are like driven too far with it, it can lead to unpleasant play experiences, especially for new players, which I think is like really important to avoid. I think the Remembrance is actually really good for Lexi into Oldhim because it allows you to kind of just shotgun off 3 of a kinds and be like, all right, 3 of a kind value, 3 of a kind value. And typically your Oldhim opponent would be like, oh yeah, he's using 3 of a kinds. I can fatigue him now. And then you just like drop down this card and you're like, hey, so I want 3 more 3 of a kinds. I found it like really effective, and it's a card I really like. But.
This is one of the cards I was most torn on. It didn't make it into my deck list, but I was really considering it. I think we didn't have enough. At least I didn't have enough time to like really find the perfect solution into Oldhim, but I think we settled on slightly different styles, just like what and I'm curious to keep testing, and like I think you found a strategy that really worked for you, and I didn't have as much time, so I just like went with the thing I knew. But I think the Remembrance makes a lot of sense, and I kind of wish I had found a way to fit it into my deck as well. Curious to test with it more in the future.
Yeah, I think like Lexi is such a playstyle specific deck that finding cards that work for you is very important. Like some people really like pitch stacking, right? And I enjoyed pitch stacking until my opponent pitch stacked Spinal, Chokeslam, Tear Asunder. Yeah. But I think like it is a viable strategy to pitch stack if you can maintain proper pressure and like keeping them off of those power pitch stack turns. Yeah, I think it's just like quite a valuable way. This sort of like strategy allows you to sort of condense your power cards into your bottom 20 and sort of create like these magical power turns of Legend, which, you know, feels good.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can soon be slinging 30 damage turns at your local Oldhims.
Get your Remembrance here.
Yeah, right? Get your Remembrance today for the small price of $3.99.
I feel like these two cards kind of go together. I feel like you often use them at like around a similar time in the game.
Yeah, I would say so. One cool thing with Quiver Abyssal Depths that you can do is towards like the end, if you like don't have an opportunity to use it until like your last like few cards, maybe you have like 4 or 5 cards left in deck, and you have a 3 of a kind that you remember back because you're playing my list, you can trigger Quiver with one of the extra blues in your hand, bring back like Red Bolton, Red Infecting, maybe Endless, and then 3 of a kind. Your next 3 cards are likely to be populated with a few reds at this point, and it really just gives you a bit of gas to get through the final turn into Oldhim. And typically it's enough. It's usually at least enough to push them out of Arsenal. And then if you have like a Codex of Frailty and like your last few cards, it kind of lets you like leak those last few damage. But yeah, that's kind of the fatigue package.
Yeah, and I think that's the whole deck list.
Yeah, with the exception of Blue Headshot, which this card is beautiful. I was running 3 copies. Breakpoints into Oldhim and your blues is nice, but
I was on 3 copies of this and I really loved it.
Oh, just the random drill shot blue.
Yeah, but I ended up on only 1. I opted to play Searing Shot Blue instead. And the reason is that Headshot is really bad when you flip it off of Heatseeker or draw it off a Ponder. It's the worst hit. So we wanted to just kind of decrease the potential blowouts in those situations. But it is one of the best blue arrows when you're playing it from hand into Oldhim, because the on hits usually aren't going to hit, so it's just the biggest raw number. So yeah, I like this card a lot. I'm still not settled on my blue arrows. Do you want to talk about why you have 1 and 1 here?
Yeah, okay, so this is kind of a funny story actually. Okay, so I will say I agree with like the Headshot, or like Ponder is not great with this, same with Heatseeker. I typically sideboard 1 into aggro matchups. Into the Mirror, because of Arctic Incarceration concerns, I bring in the 3rd one in. These 2 is kind of funny. I was going to do 2 blue drill shots because I figured it was more impactful early game, and then late game, if I'm firing a blue arrow, I'm already dead anyways, was my words. So I had 2 blue drill shots. And I was having my buddy make sure my list was like clean and like no cards were like marked or anything, and he just kept cutting to a blue drill shot, just like over and over and over again. I'm like, oh my gosh. It's like, okay, fine. So I just like ripped up my new foiled blue drill shot and put in this plain old series shot in its place. So that's why. This dealt 0 damage on the weekend, by the way. I never fired it once.
That's
so
funny.
You know. But 0s are nice. If it ever ended up in Arsenal, I would have been happy it wasn't a headshot.
Yeah.
I'll put it that way.
You could have tried to get the drill shot proxied. If it was like because the judges could cut to it too, hopefully. And then, but this works.
That's fair.
Your deck made the decision for you, I guess.
Yes, it did. I'm someone who believes in, I don't know, just like if something's bent, it's not supposed to be in your deck or something.
Yeah.
But that's just maybe a little silly. So yeah, there's the whole deck, I think.
Yeah.
Cheers, dude.
Yeah. Great job this weekend.
Cheers, Alex.
Wow, that was really intense. We have like 52 minutes.
Oh gosh.
On the clock.
Was that 50? Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry.
I didn't even realize that.
I didn't realize we were dragging it on for that long. Holy mac.
Yeah. Yeah, we are finished with the deck profile.
Yeah.
Now we will go grab some food.
Get some food.
Sounds
yeah.
amazing.
Yeah.
You must be shaking. We should have gotten you a tripod there.
It's good. Good
Lord.
For the end, do you want to shout out anyone?
Oh goodness.
I want to shout out. Okay, I want to shout out my mom. I owe all of my success to her, and then also just shout out the whole team. Wolfpack, best team in Fab. I really owe so much to him and the rest of the team for helping me prepare. Shout out to Michael for winning the Pro Tour.
Cheers, Michael. Yeah, as far as me, I want to shout out my mom too. She passed away about a month ago, but she was just like a great positive influence in my life. Person who really cared, who put other people first, would always talk to a stranger, and she would tell you about all her conversations with strangers. I just loved her. I think I get that from her. I just love talking to new people that I've never met before. Yeah, she is a passionate person, and can't wait to see her again. But I am just like so thrilled with this Pro Tour, so thrilled to be on a fabulous team with the Wolfpack. Brodie joining the team was amazing. Cheers. Michael Fang, Michael Hamilton, me, John Magnuson. John is like the Oldhim stalwart. Him and Michael Fang are like battle of the ages. They're always talking their own unique styles. They're both incredible at Oldhim. It was so good and like so helpful to like be able to practice, and people are so passionate about the deck. And John had a baby recently, but he literally was like decided he was going to Pro Tour like 2 weeks ago, and he was like, games anyone? And I was like, okay, fine, I'll play you. And it was so helpful for this tournament. I beat 2 Oldhims, and I couldn't have done all this without him. So shout out to John Magnuson. what a great player. Shout out to the whole team. So many players, Matt and Ian and Luke.
Everyone.
Yeah, so many different people who helped us get to where we are, and we wouldn't be here without them.
John was a great mentor to me for the 3.5 days that I was playing Oldham.
He just loves sharing like his love of Oldham with other people. I'm so glad that you didn't play Oldham.
Me too. I'm very glad. I think it's a good deck, but it was certainly not the right choice for me.
No, you were crushing with Lexi and Testine. I'm like, man, if you can 50-50 with me in the mirror, you should be playing this deck too. Just say it. Yeah,
I'm glad I came to my senses in the end.
Well, that would have been an expensive
mistake.
Yes.
Yeah.
But yeah, thanks so much, Alex. I am
Thanks,
so happy
Alex.
you could document our journey, and it really means a lot to me, and I can't wait to look back on these memories in the future.
Me neither, yeah. Thank you so much for having me. See you next tournament.
Yes, sir.
We'll see you then.